Hello.
Hello,
Hey, Gaby, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm good. That doesn't sound too convincing.
Yeah, I woke up a little earlier today. I had some phone calls that I had to do, so I'm a little bit more tired now come midday than I have been other days,
Of course.
where I was able to sleep in. But I'm surviving. I'm hanging in there. Overall, it's okay.
Well, hang in there. I think the whole world is feeling for all you athletes out there in Australia right now. It seems to be the most talked about event right now, everywhere you turn.
Yes, I think some people feel for us, and then some people don't pity us at all. So
Yeah,
I think,
for sure.
I think,
Depending on whose shoes
I
you're.
think both, but I think both reactions are fair, you know?
Hmm. Definitely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this with me. It's been a while
Pleasure,
that
no worries.
to face, and obviously being like one of the top Canadian players, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries.
So how are you doing? What are some things that you're currently doing in preparation for the event? Obviously, you got how many more days left in your quarantine or in your isolation?
Hopefully 9.
9.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So, uh, I've just been doing body weight workouts with bands, with the water bottles as like a lightweight. I got a bike, but the pedal needs fixing, so I'm waiting for a wrench. Um, I got an 8 kilo kettlebell so I can do a couple slightly heavier weighted exercises. I have a foam roller, yoga mat. So
Yeah.
the yoga mat I brought with me though, in
Uh,
anticipation for being in my room a lot, but just not quite as much.
I think you know how they used to do those bag checks for players to see, what you have in your bag. Well,
Yeah,
that may
exactly.
change a little in 2021 here too.
You know, it might. It really might. Yeah, we might be carrying a whole gym in there soon.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. I
Yeah.
saw some players also skipping rope, doing footwork exercises. I mean, it gets pretty creative, doesn't it?
Yeah, people are getting creative. I tried skipping rope yesterday and it went pretty well. I feel bad if my neighbors below me can hear me, you know. I can hear some noises too. Sometimes things like vibrate. Sometimes you hear like boom, boom, boom. But I can tell you, I'm not going to be one of those people that's going to play against the window or put up the mattress and hit on the honestly, like I feel like it's not my property and I don't want to damage it.
Of
And I
course.
don't think that doing that is going to make the most significant difference to when we get out of here. So for me, it's not really worth it.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, people are desperate. You know, there's a Grand Slam coming up, so I can understand when they're trying to do everything they can. But
No, definitely. How many days will you have, hopefully, between sort of being able to be out on the court and train and play and compete?
well, we have a lead up event into Australian Open. As of yet, no dates have changed. I probably hope that they push it back by a few days just so we
Mhm.
can get a couple extra days of practice in.
Yeah,
But I'm not holding my breath. You know, it is what it is. I Yeah, it probably be a very quick turnaround. As of today, it'll be a very quick turnaround. What they decide within the next week or so, I don't know.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's a tough time for everyone, whether you play a sport or you live life these days where things are unpredictable and it's hard to plan ahead. I myself am a huge planner. I love to plan. I would normally be planning for 2022 already, but it's just impossible, right? And
Yeah.
so, there's a quote by John Wooden that I heard just recently, and he says, "Don't let the things that you cannot do interfere with the things you can do."
Yep. Fair point.
I thought that was amazing, and it's sort of like, well, what can we do these days? And it's sort of, creativity sparks. But yeah, are you watching a lot of Netflix or any shows these days?
Yeah, I'm catching up on some Netflix that I was too busy to do during the prep time when I was in Florida before coming here. So
Mhm.
I've been doing that, catching up on a little bit of reading.
Good.
I've started some school courses too, so I'm gonna stay busy.
Of course. Are you playing women's doubles as well as mixed at the Open?
Yeah.
And who are your partners, if you don't mind me asking?
women's doubles, it's Bethanie Mattek-Sands, and in mixed, it's Mate Pavic.
Oh, great. Excellent. And how do you find it different playing women's doubles and mixed doubles? What are some differences there psychologically or anything that comes to mind?
Um, well, I think mixed doubles is so much fun to play. Like the dynamic, the male female dynamic, I find really interesting.
Mhm.
Sometimes the guys want to be like in control on the court, and sometimes it's great. And then sometimes they actually take themselves out of good positioning or wrong shot selection because they feel they need to be the leader and be the powerhouse. And it's like, yes, you can totally be the leader, be the powerhouse, but at the same time, a lot of us who play mixed doubles play doubles too, so we have a good skill set that can be used as well. So it's nice when you find a partner that trusts you and supports you no matter what. And in mixed doubles, I really like trying to return a guy's serve.
Mhm.
And when you do successfully do that, and sometimes you surprise them, and that's a pretty fun feeling as a girl. I don't get to do that a lot. So I
Awesome.
mean, I love mixed doubles. Women's doubles, I take probably a little bit more seriously, and um, which might not be a good thing. It's better to be relaxed. It's better to like separate yourself from the outcome, stuff like that. But I mean, doubles in general, I find fascinating with the strategy that's involved and how to work together to solve problems. So, I mean, I love both doubles and mixed double, women's doubles and mixed doubles. I think they're both great assets to tennis.
Hmm. And it sounds like within mixed doubles, you found yourself a little challenge there, like returning a guy's serve, and that really sort of brings out the best competitor in you. I could just,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And, like when you are playing different tournaments, you'd have different partners, I'm assuming as well. So how does that go? How do you try and find someone that you get along with well on court? Is that someone that you look for that's similar to you or completely different to you? Or how?
It can be, I think it can be both. It's not necessarily, there's not one perfect formula. You can play with somebody who's very similar to you in personality or game style, and that can work. And sometimes you can find somebody who's a polar opposite, and that can work as well because, your opponents get a big contrast of your game style and your partner's game style. And if they mesh very well together, then you can also be a very strong team. So it kind of just depends. There's no really set rule, but of course, it's best if you enjoy who you're playing with and you feel like you can work together towards a common goal. So
Mhm,
that's kind of what I look for now.
mhm, mhm. And so, being that it's a team sport, really, when you're playing doubles, how much emphasis and how do you emphasize your own performance as well as work on your team's performance as a partnership? Like how much emphasis is there on the two of you together versus you yourself really focusing on making sure you're the best you can be that day?
Yeah, it depends who I'm playing with and how much time we have on court together, and the time of the year and things like that. If we have several days of preparation or a week of preparation or several tournaments in a row, it just that sort of training with my partner will depend on the schedule a little bit.
Mhm,
But I would say even when I am training with my partner, I'm always working on myself anyways. I'm always working on different aspects of my game and making them better at the same time. The only difference is when I'm working with my partner, then, we're on the same side together more often. We'll discuss strategy more often, things like that.
mhm, mhm. And when you get out to these tournaments, do you find yourself often training with your partner on the other side of the net, and then you guys do some sort of drills as well, where you're on one end, she's on the other end, and it's sort of doubles based, but you're still sort of,
Yeah,
yeah.
all kinds of drills on the same side, on opposite sides. We do everything. Yeah.
I bet. How is it right now? Are you able to communicate with them as well, like with your partners, like through video, or how do you guys?
I mean, we've spoken on the phone, but mostly we're just trying to get through this period.
Or
So Bethany has her husband here, which is a big help. And unfortunately, our hitting partner is also stuck in quarantine. So we check in on each other. So far, so good, I think. But yeah, it's not been easy the first few
Yeah,
days for sure.
course, of course. Day by day, right?
That's right.
Yeah, no, I feel for you. I mean, I was stuck at home for 2.5 weeks over in November back in last year, and I got sick and I was just at home. I could not basically get out of the house, and my wife was at home as well, and she was not sick at all, but she had to quarantine, and it was a challenge on us both individually as well as on our relationship. And when you're
Yeah,
stuck in a place indoors, we're just not used to it, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Hopefully we become stronger through it.
Yeah, and discover things about ourselves that can help us when things do get back to normal.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. Whatever that will look like one day.
yeah.
Um, so, often what we are working with is adults who are playing doubles that are super keen and finding a way of motivating them to do the off-court work. Because, and currently the situation is that, most places around the world, you can't even be on a court, or if you can, there's only two players allowed, or one person having a lesson and so forth. So, what are some of your thoughts and on the importance of the things that you can do off the court to improve your game on court?
Well, I think it's important because it gives you more information. And so it helps you put the pieces of the puzzle together about your game and how to improve and where you want to go. So for me in particular, growing up, I watched a ton of video of many players, but I always found that whenever I saw something that I liked or it was a player that I liked, then I retain the information better when it's just rather than it being just anyone. So when you kind of have watched somebody play and you respect how they play or you respect them as a person, whatever, then I feel like whatever they do well, you remember more and then you're more motivated to try it too.
Hmm.
So that's one thing that I would recommend is like even if you do watch videos of other people, make sure it's somebody that you admire because I think then you're more inspired to emulate them.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I also do a lot of video work on myself because there are lots of things that I don't see when I'm on the court and I don't feel that I'm doing something wrong. A coach or a parent, they'll be like, "But you're doing this wrong," and I'll be like, "I don't feel that," but I see it on video, and then I'm like, "Oh, I get it. I wasn't turning this much. I wasn't low enough on my legs. My base wasn't wide enough. My footwork was sloppy here," and it's things that in the moment I don't recognize, but looking back, I see it, and I'm like, "Okay," but seeing it then helps me feel it. And so then when I go back on court, I can make those adjustments. It's hard to make those adjustments when you don't really understand, the mistake that you're making and then how to correct it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's so many things you can do off court though. Like that's just in terms of video work for yourself and for others. But even just like small band workouts for little injuries, like to be disciplined with those,
Hmm.
that's not easy. The physios on the WTA tour always tell us it's better to do them um, short but often. So,
Oh,
morning and night. And it doesn't need to be long, but just do it and get into the habit of doing it and it'll help, stabilize the muscles that are crucial for you to stay injury free. And it's just a matter of doing it, but it's not always easy to do it. So, the more you can force yourself, then the better habit you create to, be able to maintain long term.
hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's an interesting point to do these exercises more often because I know myself as well. You get injured, all of a sudden you're having to do these exercises and it's long and painful. But if you more often get them done, 15 minutes at a time,
that's
then
right.
it becomes a little easier, hopefully.
Yeah.
How do you sort of plan around your days normally in a regular type environment? Do you have your set schedule for your fitness workouts, for your tactical, for your video, for your own court, or is it sort of dependent on the time of year and what you need?
Um, it can depend. I usually have a set time for fitness and tennis, and then in terms of looking at video, it's a little bit more when I have the proper time to do it because after that, after my training day is done, sometimes I have to go to physio, I have to go to acupuncture, things like that. So, and those times vary a lot. So then it's just more like in the evening, but it's not necessarily a set time. So it just depends on what works for that person. But sometimes setting aside a set time is what's necessary. Like I know for me, in terms of like to do a meditation, if I don't put it in my phone and I don't have an alert on my phone that says do it now, I'm not going to do it. So I find that on the really important things that again are part of that discipline, part of that routine, you kind of need a little bit of reinforcement sometimes to help you do it.
They use technology in a positive.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, limit the screen time and use it for something
All
useful.
that. Yeah.
So, and you've had some great success in mixed doubles. Just going back to mixed doubles a little bit here. And so, tactically, you hear coaches talk about a variety of sort of options when you're playing mixed doubles, always hit with a weaker player and so forth. How much of the sort of traditional double strategy gets thrown out of the window when you're playing against a player that's, let's say, stronger and weaker?
Um, I think it matters like to a certain extent, but mixed doubles is so fast paced that sometimes you don't have time to think. And so it just goes based on instinct. And sometimes that means hitting to the stronger player because also what we notice happens in mixed doubles is um because the male player wants to sort of take over the court in some moments that they leave gaps.
Oh,
Like, so their normal positioning changes and they try to cover more of the court, but then there's another gap. So sometimes it's even good to play near the guy player because he's maybe trying to move to cover his partner.
mhm,
So it
mhm.
just kind of depends because some male players don't do that as much. It really depends on the player and what their
Right,
tendencies are.
right.
So you just kind of have to see, how they manage the mixed doubles like partnership.
That's a very good point. Yeah, you never thought of that really. But yeah, if the guy's moving out of his way to take some balls, or then he's probably leaving something else open. I
Hmm.
mean, for me, I'm watching mixed doubles is quite interesting as well because you often will have the female player stay stronger under pressure. I'm finding. And obviously it's not always the same, but I've watched a lot of matches where in that tight situation, all of a sudden the girls are going for it, hitting out, whereas the guys are a little more tentative because it is different pressure for the guys as well, right?
Yeah,
As well as for
that's
you girls.
That's so true. Yeah. And so I feel like also we want to prove ourselves and step up and do the best that we can in that moment and prove that we're also like part of this team and capable and stuff
Of
like
course.
that. And I find like sometimes for some guys it's very difficult to return a girl serve because they're not used to the spin and the trajectory change
Mhm.
because of the height difference and the amount of power that like a girl can generate over a guy. So that's another part where I've noticed that sometimes guys struggle with a girl's serve just because they're so not used to the ball being that much lower and actually having to generate their own pace from, below the ball or just from less pace. So
Mhm.
it becomes a very tricky sort of thing. And then of course the ego part comes into it. And then sometimes they take it too seriously or they put too much pressure on themselves to be like, oh well, how can I be missing like the girl serve? But at the
Mhm.
same time it's like, no, it's not a big deal. It's just you don't see that ball, just like I don't see a 120 something mile an hour serve come at me consistently, and yet it is. I also am trying to adapt differently. So it's just it's just a matter of like how you adjust to those things, and it can be very tricky.
Sounds like it. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, that's the fun in it, and there's a
Yeah.
different sort of aspect to the game. You have more ego involved, and yeah, no, but it's interesting. It's awesome. Um,
Hmm.
how did you transition from playing more singles to more doubles, or when did that sort of love for doubles grow for you?
Well, it was probably in my early 20s. I was stuck at around 200 in the world in singles, and I couldn't afford a coach.
Mhm.
to really take my game to the next level. There was only so much I could do with a kind of like homegrown type of tennis and traveling and just trying to wing it. It wasn't really working for singles. You really do need a full-time coach to help you, to be your eyes, to notice your blind spots.
Mhm.
And so for me, there was a moment where it kind of came to be like, well, I don't really know what to do. Like, I can't really survive playing tennis, staying at 200 because you don't make enough money to be able to invest in yourself.
Mhm.
But I was going much further in the doubles draws pretty consistently. And so it just occurred to me that maybe there was an opportunity for me to pursue doubles and be able to make a living out of tennis and to make it to all the big tournaments. And maybe that was my chance to down the road make the Olympics, because the Olympics has always been my number one goal.
Mhm.
And so then I started to make that transition. I started to sacrifice more singles. My doubles ranking improved. But as I got further in the doubles tournaments, that meant I couldn't make it for qualifying in singles for the next week. So therefore, my singles ranking was dropping and dropping and dropping. I wasn't able to maintain it. But my doubles ranking was getting better. And I was lucky enough to play with some really great girls and just get to where I wanted to be over
Mhm.
time. But yeah,
Mhm.
it was not easy,
Yeah.
because it was also a matter of me putting my ego aside as well, um, and kind of just rolling with the punches and trying to figure out how to be a professional tennis player while still making money.
Of
Because at
course.
the end of the day, we're all trying to still support ourselves.
Of course. It's unfortunate that, someone that's ranked in the 200 in the world, which is a tremendous accomplishment. I mean, it's unbelievably difficult to be the top 200 or top 500. And yet I think, and that's a whole other conversation probably, but it's interesting how that's happening, and hopefully that changes one day. That players are capable of getting the support team around them to be able to keep moving forward within what they like to do.
I agree, yeah, because I don't want to see in 10 years' time tennis lose talented players to the way that the system is structured, like that shouldn't happen. If you're talented and you work hard and you have the skill set and you've made all the sacrifices just like everybody else, then you should have an opportunity to realize your potential, and it shouldn't be a financial barrier that stops you. So,
Right.
um, yeah, I
Hopefully.
agree. Yeah.
Hopefully. Well, and so, when you're going into matches, a couple more questions about this one here. It's how do you prepare for a match where you don't know who you're playing against? And so more and more often, probably deeper in the draw, you know who you're playing against and what their game styles are like. But if you're playing new players or new opponents that you haven't really seen or played against yet, how do how much focus is there on you and your partner versus figuring out, how are the opponents playing?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think it's important to find a balance between focusing on yourself and focusing on your opponents, because you don't want to over focus on your opponents. You want to get some scouting done if you can, watch videos of them, maybe talk to other people or have a coach look at videos for you and have a discussion about their strengths and weaknesses. But then you don't want to get too caught up in everything that they do, because it takes the focus off of how you want to play.
Mhm.
And so I it's good you asked that, because it's a good reminder for me too, because I'm a very like information oriented person, so I want to know everything about someone or a situation or something that happens in a match. On this point they like to do that, but sometimes you just have to trust your own instinct about what feels right in that moment, regardless of who's on the other side of the court.
Mhm.
And I think it's much better if you know the tendencies of your opponents, but then you forget who they are, whatever ranking they are, whatever wins they've just had or losses, it doesn't matter. And then you focus on the ball coming at you, and you've played long enough to where you can handle then, what's thrown at you. And if you get outplayed, you get outplayed. But you go into it with the confidence that you know yourself and you know your game, and you're going to trust your strengths. And
Mm,
if they're too good and they exploit too many of your weaknesses, okay, then you get to work on it. But you
mm,
can't fix everything in one match. You can't plan for everything that will happen.
yeah.
So
Yeah. And how often does it happen that you do go out and play your game, play well, and you end up losing score-wise? Does that happen very often, or?
um for me, I would say when I'm playing my best, it doesn't happen that much. When me and my partner are both playing very, very well, whoever I've partnered with, I would say it doesn't happen that much. I would say I mostly lose matches when I'm not playing at a level that I'm
That you're
satisfied
capable?
with.
Hmm.
So, and sure, there are days when I'm playing great, my partner's playing terrible, I'm playing terrible, my partner's playing great. That's doubles. And that you just have to, again, it's just rolling with the punches there. It happens. You try to support each other the best that you can.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's sometimes difficult to find that balance.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of doubles too. So
Right. Yeah. It's very much like life, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
So who takes sort of initiative or charge between that, partnership that you have? Does it vary based on how that day is going, or is there always someone that's sort of going like, no, you know what, let's do this tactically, or let's do that tactically in the next point, or who leads that?
It depends on the partner. So some people tend to want to take the initiative. Others are a little bit more reserved. Doesn't mean that one way is right, one way is wrong. Sometimes you need somebody to step up, other times you need them to back off. So I think it's better if you're a little bit more aware of the situation and then you react accordingly. So if you sense your partner's down, but down, very down, sometimes they need like a big boost. But if they're just a little bit down, it's just a small boost, like you don't need to overdo it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the worst things that can happen is when you begin to micromanage your partner. I'm guilty of doing that. Some other partners are guilty of doing that with me. And I find that overkill of information or support sometimes makes things worse, especially if you're in a more consistent partnership,
Hmm.
because then it becomes a bit of a habit. And then you feel like, oh, we know each other better. Maybe we're closer as friends. And then you feel like, oh, I can tell her something maybe in the first game of the match if I notice a mistake. And it's like, no, like leave. That's one thing I would say. Leave the first game of the match. If your partner's making a mistake, let it go.
Yeah.
Because the first game of the match is not really an indication of the rest of the match. Sometimes it's nerves, sometimes it's overconfidence, sometimes it's they're not, focused yet. And so I would, if someone's being a bit funny in the first game, kind of let it go. It doesn't necessarily mean things are going to keep going. You just watch the pattern. If you feel like there's a pattern, then maybe you say something, but it's just a very sensitive sort of
Hmm.
thing,
Hmm. Oh.
so it just really depends on the situation and the people,
Yeah.
as well.
Well, that's great. And then, a lot of what you're talking about is sort of real relationship advice, isn't it, as well? Like in so, did you acquire these skills through your coaches in the past, or just through your own personal experiences and family, or is it through sports psychology, books? How does that get
Uh,
developed? You obviously have a great understanding of what needs to be done in a partnership.
Probably a bit of everything. Some coaching when I was younger and in my teenage years, some guidance. I would say some just from playing a long time and playing a lot of doubles, some from hearing what other people do and what works, what doesn't work. Sometimes just communicating with my partner directly and saying, what do you like? What don't you like? um it's kind of like a mix, I think, of everything at this point. Yeah.
Nice. And how do you yourself deal with pressure when it comes your way, like within a match, for whatever reason? Do you have a strategy that you go to usually, or?
Well, it's something that I've really always struggled with, because like I said, I take tennis very seriously. And I've always felt like I'm accountable for my actions, you know, and but sometimes that hurts me because, you know, I tighten up and then I get nervous. So now what I've been trying to teach myself to do is to focus on my breathing, pay attention, you know, to the air coming in and out of my nostrils, or if I'm really winded, in and out of my mouth. Um, Sometimes it's paying attention to just like the feeling of the racket in my hand or the feeling of my body moving on the court. So taking myself out of my head and putting myself into my body, because my body knows what to do. And if it doesn't know what to do, that just means it's something that needs to be improved and it needs to be drilled in better. You know, but muscle memory at this point is pretty much set. So it's more about how do I get my best tennis out of me in those pressure moments. And so I've been trying to apply these new habits, to my game so that I can play my best tennis more often. And so I'm not getting in my own way as much. And I know a lot of people can relate to that too, especially if you're like a natural overthinker like
Of
me.
course. Definitely. So what's your like ideal point? If you were to play a point and win it, like what would it be like?
It would be an ace.
It would be an ace.
It would
Okay.
be an ace. Done there. No, but if the point continues, I mean, I love being at the net. So I love any play that involves volleys and overheads. So I love to get to the net. I love to poach. I love to fake and have somebody play on me. I love that aspect of doubles. I think it's really, really fun because then I get to use like my skill set, which I think are like my reactions, and anticipation at the net. So yeah, so that would probably be like my favorite like situation to be in. Yeah.
Well, it's very obvious how passionate you are for the game, and I know it must be killing you to be sitting inside of a room. But again, like really, thank you so much for chatting with me. Me personally, I wish you all the best, and for hopefully a great rest of the year, as well as this tournament to start with. And yeah, so yeah, thanks again, and take care of yourself. And we can't wait to watch you play. And I'm gonna share
Oh,
with everybody that I
thanks.
know.
I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're
It's been
welcome.
really
Thank
nice
you.
chatting.
Yeah. Good. Thanks,
All
Gabby. Have
right.
a good rest of your
Stay
day.
safe up there, huh?
Yeah, I know. Have
Take
a good
care.
sunny day. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.